Ladies and gentlemen, Howard Lorber, Chairman of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council.
Members of Congress and the administration, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, and most especially Holocaust survivors and veterans. Welcome to our nation's annual Holocaust commemoration. 73 years ago this month, the American soldiers we are about to honor entered places like Dachau, Buchenwald, and Mauthausen, names once unknown and now infamous. Those young soldiers, and they were very, very young, had by then become hardened by battle, yet nothing prepared them for what they would witness when they entered the camps. They had marched through forests and snow, across battlefields strewn with fallen comrades, but for many, the single step through the camp gates was the hardest one to take. War was one thing. Humans had engaged in war since the beginning of time. But genocide, this was new. The soldiers knew humanity had crossed a threshold that must never be forgotten. And their leader, General Dwight Eisenhower, for whom the museum's entrance plaza is named, knew it too. Almost a month before the German surrender, he took time from the war effort to visit one of these camps to see if the reports he had read were accurate. When he entered Ohrdruf, he realized the reports were accurate, but the words were inadequate. Words could never communicate the horrible truth. The depravity of the perpetrators and the suffering of the victims were beyond belief. That was precisely what worried Eisenhower. He urged soldiers, officials, and journalists to visit the camps to be witnesses. He hoped an abundance of first-hand accounts of the atrocities would prevent anyone from ever attributing them to propaganda. Sadly, on this he was wrong, very wrong. Today we hear that the very charge of propaganda from those who deny or minimize the Holocaust. We expected much progress from humankind over the past 7 decades, but even a watershed event like the Holocaust could not change human nature. And that is why we have a United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in our nation's capital. Because the courageous soldiers who defeated Nazism have much to teach us about ourselves, about what we are capable of and what we are responsible for. They have done this over many years alongside the Holocaust survivors who have shared their stories of immense suffering and loss and served as exemplars of dignity, compassion, and resilience. Together, the liberators and the liberated forged an unshakable bond. They understand things the rest of us will never understand. Today, we honor them both. As first the survivors and then the liberating flags march in, we realize that every year there are fewer and fewer eyewitnesses and that the task of testimony is becoming our responsibility. As their voices dim, our responsibility rises. We owe it to the survivors and veterans and to future generations to heed Eisenhower's warning and assume that responsibility. Because the unthinkable will always be possible. Unthinkable horror and unthinkable heroism. We must forever remember both.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for presentation of the flags of the United States Army Liberating Units. First Infantry Division, Falkenau an der Eger, and 101st Airborne Division, Landsberg. 2nd Infantry Division, Leipzig-Schönefeld and Sperrgau, and 82nd Airborne Division, Wörblen. 4th Infantry Division, Dachau subcamps, and 20th Armored Division, Dachau. 8th Infantry Division, Wörblen, and 14th Armored Division, Dachau subcamps. 26th Infantry Division, Gusen, and 12th Armored Division, Landsberg. 29th Infantry Division, Dienstlaken, and 11th Armored Division, Gusen and Mauthausen. 30th Infantry Division, Weferlingen, and 10th Armored Division, Landsberg. 36th Infantry Division, Kaufering Camps, and 9th Armored Division, Falkenau an der Eger. 42nd Infantry Division, Dachau, and 8th Armored Division, Halberstadt-Zwieberger. 45th Infantry Division, Dachau, and 6th Armored Division, Buchenwald. 63rd Infantry Division, Kaufering Camps, and 4th Armored Division, Ohrdruf. 65th Infantry Division, Flossenburg Subcamp, and 3rd Armored Division, Dora Mittelbau. 69th Infantry Division, Leipzig-Thekla, and 104th Infantry Division, Dora Mittelbau. 71st Infantry Division, Gunskirchen, and 103rd Infantry Division, Landsberg. 80th Infantry Division, Buchenwald and Ebensee, and 99th Infantry Division, Dachau subcamps. 83rd Infantry Division, Langenstein, and 95th Infantry Division, Wörl. 84th Infantry Division, Allem and Salzwedel, and 90th Infantry Division, Flossenburg. 86th Infantry Division, Attendorn, and 89th Infantry Division, Ohrdruf. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for presentation of the national colors and the national anthem.
So broadly we Blitzen breitar stroga perilous fight. All the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming. When the rockets cracked the bombs burst in air, gaze forth through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Bloomfield, Director of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
This ceremony was originally created to mark the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which occurred 75 years ago this month. But well before there were ghettos, there were warning signs and sounds. Today, we remember the sound of glass breaking in the night 80 years ago. In that sound, there were others that echo across the ages, the sounds of mothers weeping, of mobs shouting, of trains rattling, and the intolerable sound of the world's silence. We remember, too, the sounds we will never hear, the sounds of joy and laughter, the sounds of an endless horizon of generations never born to millions not allowed to live. We remember the sound of glass breaking because it was also the sound of illusions shattering. But at the museum, we do more than remember. We ask why, and we seek to give meaning to what we learn. The Nazis ruled Germany for nearly 6 long years before the night of broken glass. Those were years of propaganda and terror, persecution and imprisonment. Yet for many throughout Europe and in our own country, even in these very halls of freedom, wishful thinking prevailed. Germany wanted the Jews out. No one wanted them in. With pressure mounting, our own government called for an international conference to discuss the refugee crisis. In July 1938, in Evian, France, 32 countries met. Little was expected, even less was accomplished. The world's doors were essentially shut. And then the glass broke. And once the glass broke, illusions would give way to indifference and other priorities. This was the moment beyond which the world could not claim it did not know. Just weeks after Kristallnacht a headline in the Los Angeles Examiner shouted, "Nazis warn world, Jews will be wiped out unless evacuated by democracies." In less than 2 years, a place called Auschwitz was being built. That is why we remember, first to honor the victims, and then to remind ourselves, and we always need reminding, why illusions are so easy and so dangerous, why we were so deaf to the sound of broken glass. This is our eternal regret, but we do not remember for the sake of regret alone. We remember in order to act, to reinforce the eternal aspiration for freedom that must be actively promoted and forever protected. That is why the Holocaust Memorial Museum sits in between the monuments to Washington and Jefferson. And that's why we remember in this hall of democracy. All are testaments to America's values and aspirations, and to our great nation's capacity for self-reflection, so that we can always strive to be better at not only hearing the warning signs, but in heeding them. One person who has never stopped heeding the warning signs is Ben Ferencz, the only living prosecutor from the Nuremberg trials. At age 27, in his very first criminal trial, he secured guilty verdicts against 22 high-ranking SS officers accused of the murder of over 1 million innocent men, women, and children. Since then, he has helped preserve history and memory by donating his Nuremberg papers to the museum, and has devoted his life to restitution for survivors and to the pursuit of justice for victims of genocide.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Ferencz.
Thank you all. I thank you all very much. You see, I'm getting up in the world. I'm really honored to be here today. I want to thank the sponsors, members of the Holocaust Museum. I'm touched very much by the remarks made, not only by the one who turned the microphone on now, but also for Sarah Wiseman's very touching remarks. I've been asked to come and say a few words to solve all the problems in the world and to take as much time as I like, providing I finish within 15 minutes. So let me try to share some thoughts with you. It's been mentioned that I was involved with the Nuremberg trials. But before that, I was, the same as many of you here, an immigrant boy. My parents were living in what was first called Hungary. By the time I was born, it was called Romania. And I learned right away it doesn't matter what the country's called, it's how you treat your people that's more important. We came to the United States, poor immigrants, no language, no money, no skills. We were fortunate. A Jewish landlord who had a few houses on the west side of Manhattan said we could sleep in the cellar. My father would be the janitor, would take out the coal in the morning and collect the garbage. And that's where my earliest memories begin. I had decided early on, since I was short, as some of you may have noticed, that I had to be better than most. And I managed to be admitted to a special high school, Townsend Harris in New York, for those of you who know it, New Yorkers. The teacher had sent me there because she said I was a gifted boy. I didn't know what that meant. I never got any gifts. From there, I went on to City College in New York. It didn't cost anything. It was cheap. And I asked, what's the best law school in the world? And I was told Harvard, so I applied for Harvard. They gave me an exam on criminal law, where I, of course, had the edge, because I lived in the high-density crime area, Hell's Kitchen. So I got a scholarship from the Harvard Law School and went on. I was just about finishing school when the Japanese attacked at Pearl Harbor. Everybody I knew went down to enlist, including me. I won't go into the details of how the Army missed their opportunities to have me as a great soldier, but eventually I managed to get in as a private in the artillery and being trained for the invasion of France. And I landed on the beaches of Normandy with the 115th AAA Gun Battalion. I don't know if we had such fancy flags as this. I never saw them. And we chased, General Patton was chasing the Germans all the way back. And when I was finally discharged from the Army, as an honorable discharge as a sergeant of infantry, I was awarded 5 battle stars for not having been killed or wounded in any of the major battles of the war. I appreciated that. I thought that was a very good idea. As the war was coming to a close, I was ordered to go out of the 115th AAA Gun Battalion to General Patton's headquarters and to report to a judge advocate's section there. I was told that my name had been forwarded from Washington, and they had been instructed to set up a war crimes branch. The name had been forwarded, I'm guessing, because a professor at Harvard, for whom I did the research, had written a book on war crimes, and he had been in touch with the Pentagon. They had been in touch with him, and I suppose he said, you want to know about war crimes? Go look for Benny, he's out there somewhere. And I believe I was the first man in the American Army to deal with war crimes. I explained to the colonel that, what a war crime was, and I also explained to him pretty soon that just leave me alone. I'll paint on my Jeep Emerald, always alone. I'll bring home the evidence. And as we entered some of the concentration camps, the first one was Buchenwald. It was a 4-camp, Gusen. Before Buchenwald, many of these camps had sub-camps. I was there before General Eisenhower came to visit. And I've been asked to describe, what my reactions were when we reached the camp. I have difficulty with that. They were indescribable. Since this is a Holocaust group, you will know, not only some of you from your own recollections and experiences, but the impression it made on me. It's indescribable. Dead bodies lying on the ground. You couldn't tell if they were dead or alive. Their eyes appealing for help. People scrounging in piles of garbage, looking for some morsel of food to stop the starvation. Crematoria is still going, with bodies in them. I moved from one camp to the next as fast as the front could move forward. I went from Buchenwald to Flossenburg to Mauthausen to Ebensee to a whole string of camps, one after the other. In each camp, the procedure was the same. I would come in and go immediately to the tank commander of the unit which had liberated the camp. And I said, I'm here on orders of General Eisenhower, carrying out a program for the United States of America. I want 10 men immediately to surround the Schreibstube. Nobody goes in or out without my permission. They would say, yes, sir. I was then a corporal, or most of the time, later a sergeant. I never showed any of my insignia because I wouldn't have been able to do the job. And the pass which I used, 3rd Army headquarters and so on, take notice, the bearer, Benjamin Ferencz, I'd crossed out the rank, is authorized to collect evidence on behalf of this headquarters. All units are directed to give him every possible assistance. Signed on behalf of General Patton, and by some lieutenant who was sober at the time mostly. And that authorization got me in to behave just as though I were General Patton. And that's what I did. You may find it still on the wall here somewhere when I donated all of my archives, 2 truckloads, to the museum. That was included. The pass that I used to get me into the concentration camps and to be able to act like a general in order to collect all the evidence immediately and move on. I was doubly amused because I had stamped secret on it, so that if somebody wanted to know what I was doing there and I had no insignia on me, I would say it's a secret. And if they insisted, I would show them this thing marked secret. When it was posted here in the museum, I don't know if it's still there, they had to get it declassified. So they had all the declassification stamps on it. And so that's a memorable piece of evidence. However, in addition to that, I seized all the records, the Totenbücher, the death registries, which they had in the camps, the numbers of the inmates, the living conditions were there for everyone to see. Then I'd move on quickly to the next camp, camp after camp. And it was all similar, very much the same, basically the same. Mauthausen was bigger and perhaps worse, but all of them, I had peered into hell, is the way I had described it. Absolutely incredible to a rational human mind how human beings can be treated that way. They were being literally worked to death as part of an overall program, Vernichtung durch Arbeit, kill them through work. And that was the goal, and that was what they did. The war was over. I went home. Before I could leave, however, I was approached by a representative of the American Joint Distribution Committee who said, we've gotten a law passed authorizing a Jewish charity to recover restitution of the properties which had been stolen from the Jews. And if there were no claimants, they were presumed to be dead, you would be in charge of the organization to collect the heirless and unclaimed Jewish property. I set that up. I was the first employee. They said, we don't have any money to pay you, of course, but we'll pay you your army salary for 6 months, and that was it. So I designated myself the Director General of the Jewish Restitution Success Organization, and I was not only the Director General, I was the entire staff. From that, I went on to set up the Claims Conference office in Germany. When Chancellor Adenauer finally agreed that terrible crimes had been committed in the name of the German people, which imposed on them an obligation to make amends, and we began to negotiate how we would do that. And there were a group of terrorists determined to kill us. And the terrorists who wanted to kill us, we were a small group of maybe 10 people working on this, led by Nachum Goldman of the World Jewish Congress. And they wanted to kill us. They said, how can you sit down with the murderers of our parents and talk to them about money? Have you no shame? And one of the leaders of the group was a gentleman whose name you may know, Menachem Begin, who was the Prime Minister of Israel when it was created, and who also won the Nobel Peace Prize. Moral of the story, be careful who you call a terrorist. And there were other lessons. Let me go on now to the Nuremberg trial itself. The trial which is known as the Nuremberg trial, was represented by the United States, was represented by Justice Robert Jackson, not by me. I'm not Jackson. I may look like him, at least. We have 2 arms and legs, but there were subsequent trials, 12 subsequent trials, designed to give a broader picture of the German society and how it was possible for a civilized country like Germany to engage in the type of activities which were carried out by them. And the man in charge of that was General Telford Taylor. Later, we were law partners in New York. He interviewed me. He sent for me. The war was over. I went home. I didn't want any part of anything else. I was collecting evidence for war crimes, of shooting down of American flyers, for example, where I had to dig them up with my hands because you can't use a pick on them. You don't know if it's a bayonet wound or a bullet wound. And to identify the body and find out who killed them, and arrange for military commission trials about which very little is known. I was involved in all of that. And then I was asked to go back to Germany to help with the subsequent trials. And the Einsatzgruppen trial, which was a case in which my first assignment was to collect evidence for all of the trials. General Taylor said, look, you know about collecting evidence. You've been in the Army. You've been in the camps. You go and get us the evidence for the trials, because if you have the defendants, the suspects, and you don't have evidence, you've got nothing. And so I began to do that in Berlin, set up an office with about 50 people, going through the German archives, and one of my researchers showed up with the reports of the Einsatzgruppen. Einsatzgruppen nobody could translate. It means action groups. And it was daily reports from the front on how many Jews they had killed. Their assignment was to murder without pity or remorse every single Jewish man, woman, and child they could lay their hands on, to extinguish them, destroy them completely. They never used that kind of language. They would say eliminate them, move them, and so on. And that's what they did, 3,000 men every day going out and murdering Jewish men, women, and children. The children, there were divisions how they should be killed. Some of the commanders would just take the infant by the legs and smash the head against a tree. Some of them were not quite so brutal. My lead defendant, Dr. Otto Ollendorf, general in the SS, said he didn't like his men doing that. He suggested instead they aim for the infant, and the bullet will kill both the infant and the mother at the same time and save ammunition, and they'll all be quiet until the moment of death. He was a more humanitarian approach. It's just as when they put in the gas vans, they put in big trailer trucks, like the bus you came in here. They jam everybody inside, lock the door, the gas from the exhaust would come in and kill them in about 20 minutes, by which time they reached the place where they were going to dump them like garbage and dump them. And I knew the people, and I tried them. I was 27 years old. It was my first case. And I got the case. Someone wanted to know because all the other cases had been assigned against the doctors and against lawyers and so on. And I said, you have to put on this trial. And General Taylor said, we have no staff. The Pentagon won't approve it. Can you do it in addition to your spare time? I said, sure. So we said, okay, you do it. And so I made history. I arrested the prosecution's case in 2 days. And I convicted all of the defendants, and 13 were sentenced to death. Now, what will interest you and perhaps surprise you, I didn't ask for the death penalty. Normally, you would expect the prosecutor to do that, and the reason I didn't ask was because I didn't see any way you could get justice for these 22 people for murdering 1 million people. There was no way to balance that scale. And if I could do something more important than that, if I could create a rule of law which would bind and protect all people, because the victims were killed because they didn't share the race and the religion and the ideology of their executioners. And if I could make it the law that they couldn't kill people for such reasons, that rule, principle of law would protect everybody forever, everywhere. And I asked the court to affirm that as the principle and the purpose of that trial, and they complied. Judge Michael Masmondo, presiding judge, formerly of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, wrote the judgment in the case, and that's what I intended to do. And I've been doing it ever since. I've been trying to create a world of peace and harmony and justice, and it's not easy, as you know. The principles of the UN Charter to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war has been betrayed by those in whom we're entrusted the Security Council has carried out. And we see the same crimes being committed all around the world today. And how do we get around to it? What did I learn from Nuremberg? What can I pass on to share with you? Nuremberg taught that war making is the supreme international crime, because in a war, all the other crimes are committed. Rape, murder, pillage, these are all crimes which are committed in every war and will be committed in every war, no matter what you say and what you do. And I've seen it in action when the Russians got into Berlin and they raped everything that moved. So that was a basic principle. We had other things which seemed to me quite basic. War making itself is a crime against humanity. We have a group here focusing on genocide. Every war is genocidal, but it's not only genocidal. Today it's suicidal, and because it'll kill everybody. From cyberspace, we have the capacity now to kill everybody on this planet. When will you wake up and start to change it? I like to talk to young people. There are not so many of them here, but they're your children and your grandchildren I'm speaking for. And the current system whereby if two heads of state are unable to agree, they send the young people out to kill other young people they don't even know, who've never done them any harm, and they ask them to kill them. And when they come back, they pause for a while, declare victory, and then start all over again. And so what we are doing, we're engaging in arms races, spending billions of dollars every day trying to compete with other big nations who are trying to do the same. And instead of using the money to take care of the legitimate complaints of people who are like me, refugees, looking for a job, looking for a place to live in peace, they are going back to killing as usual. Things have got to change, the law has to change, and I have to end this talk as well. So let me tell you what has been my concluding observation. People are guided by slogans. I have a slogan. Everyone can remember it. If you like, tattoo it on your cup, on your bottom, I don't care where. Law, not war. Now, if you could do that, you would save billions of dollars every day. You'd have money to take care of the refugees. You'd have money to take care of the sick, the students, the old people as well. 3 words. And how are you going to get there, Mr. Ferenc? How are you going to get there? I'll tell you how to get there. I'll give you 3 ways to get there. 1, never give up. 2, never give up. 3, never give up. You got it, and that's what I'm doing. Thank you for the honor of being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing or stand for El Malarachamim, the prayer for the dead, which will be chanted by Chazan Asa Fratkin.
כנפי השכינה. אמלא קדושים וטהורים כזוהר כי המסירים את כל הנשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים חללי השואה באירופה שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו ושנספו. אוי קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים ועוזריהם משאר העמים באושוויץ, טרבלינקה, Majdanek, Mauthausen, Bergen-Belsen, Sobibor, ובשאר מחנות ההשמדה שהלכו לעולמים ובעבור שכל הקהל מתפלל לעילוי נשמותיהם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בצדק כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, בגן עדן תמנוחתם. ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Holt, Vice Chair of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council.
Good morning. As has been said, unto every person there is a name. In every culture, names have special significance. In families and faith, The act of naming is a sacred one, embodying the power of creation, love, identity, and belonging. Our names also express our individuality. That is why the Nazis not only persecuted and killed the Jews, but they denied them their names. In Germany, Jewish women had to adopt Sarah as a middle name. For men, it was Israel. Passports were stamped with the letter J. Then badges in the form of a Jewish star were required. Names, markings, badges not only meant Jews were different, but also no longer recognized as citizens of the state. The meaning was clear. Jews were no longer worthy of the concern or protection from their friends, neighbors, and co-workers. These assaults on their identity would become ominous steps on the road to oblivion. In Auschwitz, a number, often tattooed on the arm, replaced the name, turning a human being into a statistic. I saw the tattooed number on my father's arm. It took over 70 years to fade, but he still remembers the number. Perhaps that made them easier to kill. Certainly, it made them easier to forget. That's why we must remember, and that's why today we recall those names and those individuals in all their uniqueness. We restore them to dignity and humanity their oppressors so brutally took from them. So we invite 12 Holocaust survivors to light the memorial candles. We recognize that for everyone who survived, there were many who did not. Today, we honor the survivors and remember the victims exactly as they deserve to be remembered. We cannot name each of the 6 million, but we can pay tribute to them and their humanity. We cannot bring them back, but we can give them back their names. The candles will be lit by the following survivors: Jacqueline Mendels Byrne, Fred Flatow, Ruth Cohn, Albert Gary, Julie Kiefer, Mark Kasanoff, Sylvia Rosinas, Frank Lieberman, Felice Zimmern Stokes, Michael Adler, Bertina Bergstein, and Rabbi Philip Lazowski. As the survivors light the candles, the names of victims will be read by 2 participants in the museum's leadership training programs: Officer Pamela Garay of the DC Metropolitan Police Department and First Lieutenant Evan Kowalski of the United States Army. I would like to begin by reciting the names of my own grandparents, whom I never knew, but whom, like 6 million others, we can never allow history or humanity to forget. Hinda Holsecker, Avram Holsecker, Dora Nirishlavska, Samuel Nirishlavska.
Annie Mendoz, Pena Brem, Ella Benstern, Alois Marleski, Johannes Bond, Raleigh Demont, Rebecca Polak, Raji Saman Hovek, Fahi Saman Hovek, Mickey Rottenberg, Hugo Kotzen, Haya Leah Fischel, Alfred Bafu, Abra Heyman D. Beer, Nicholas Verlposh, Chessa Volman, Schmushel Neifeld, Inga Hammen, Irene Rosak, Jaquise Minetti, Jenny Jari, Rachel Weisenstein, Jacob Herskowitz, Haynes Litton, Emmanuel Vanderkars, Merla Zamkovsky, Theodore Simon, Edith Fogel,
Frida Wise, Marcel Hoyer, Sharon Rosenthal Lichtman, Lola Lakonish, Julius Lesser, Henri Joffrey, Tekla Mendels, Rivka Gutman, Antonius Vandy Vathorst, Mordehi Auerbach, Beatrice Prince, Anna Knoll, Berta Sumerlate, Theodore Porges, Coca Pasternak, Carl Spath, Esther Friedman, John Marchebouf, Mosek Horn, Yakov Wolkowitz, Jacob Weiss, Kleber Sukor, Henry Foy, Maria Chermina, David Schachter, Roger Lacroix, Fagel Blocksten, Hava Eisen, Sarah Gruber.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as Holocaust survivor and museum volunteer Peter Gorok leads us in recitation of the Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברי קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא ויתחדר ויתהלל ויתחלל שמי דקודשה ברכו. לעולם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבעתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה והאם עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the singing of the Hymn of the Partisans, led by Chazan Fradkin, and the retirement of the flags.
Sag nicht kein Mal aus, du gehst im letzten Weg, wenn Himnen bleierne verstellen bleie Tag. Willkommen wird noch unser ausgewänkte Schott, es wird abheugt an unser Trott, mir seinen Bock. Willkommen wird noch unser ausgewänkte Schott, es wird abheugt an unser Trott, mir seinen Bock. Al natomar hine darkia achrona, et or hayom mistiro shmeyanana, seyom nisafno loria alveyavo, umitzaten or yarim anachno po, seyom nisafno loria alveyavo, umitzaten or yarim anachno po. Come with me, you mustn't say this is the end, even though you walk alone without a friend. For the day that we all dreamed about is near, when we'll shout to all the world, we still are here. For the day that we all dreamed about is near, when we'll shout to the world, we are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sharing our national commitment to Holocaust remembrance. The program is concluded.